League One finished off yesterday with a brilliant game between Birmingham City and Wrexham, but there's been a lot of shocks, a lot of trials and tribulations this week, with Bolton Wanderers getting absolutely hammered by Huddersfield Town. We're going to take a look into every single fixture on the League One calendar from this weekend. We're going to look and take a deep dive into everything. Now, before we do get into that, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell. We're trying really hard on the channel to hit 1.3 thousand subscribers. I really appreciate all the support on recent videos, but should we get straight into looking at the League One league table? So here we have it then. After 6 games, Wrexham lead the way with 13 points, joint with both Birmingham City and Charlton Athletic. Now, obviously, Birmingham City have played 1 less game. They've only played 5 and are still undefeated, as are Stockport. And it's one of those for me where obviously we're still really early on into the season. Obviously, teams like Wrexham, who played during the international break, they've got 40 games left. Birmingham City have 41. Now, if we do just close out the playoff positions, you've got Lincoln City in 6th, Stockport and Huddersfield in 5th and 4th, with obviously Charlton, Birmingham and Wrexham leading the way on 13 points. Now, if we just go to the in-between stage, you've got Barnsley on 10 in 7th, Mansfield on 8, Stevenage on 7, Wycombe Wanderers on 7, Peterborough, Reading, Crawley and Bristol Rovers all on 7 as well. You've then got a host of teams on 6, with Wigan, Exeter and Rotherham. And then you've got Blackpool and Northampton sitting there just above the relegation zone on 5. You've got Burton Albion sitting on 4 in 20th. And Bolton Wanderers, who have really struggled this season, are also sitting on 4. You've then got Leyton, Orient, Shrewsbury and Cambridge filling out the rest of the table. Cambridge sitting on 1 point. Shrewsbury and Leyton Orient sitting on 3. Now, it is obviously really early days, but Bolton Wanderers, they've just really struggled, and Burton Albion too. They've struggled to put proper results on the board. Obviously, Burton Albion are 4 unbeaten with those draws, but they're unable to win games. And to be competitive in this division, you have to win games. Like if we go to the top, you obviously look at Wrexham, won 4 out of 6. Birmingham won 4 out of 5. And that's the common theme among the top end. Now, as we head in to looking into the fixtures, it's obviously really important to take into account these league positions and obviously where you anticipate teams will finish. Now, obviously, these ones in the top 6 are doing really well to start off with. But shall we get into the fixtures? Starting out in League One then, we're going to be taking a look at Mansfield Town versus Cambridge United, where yet again, Cambridge have been unable to hold on for a point. They've been unable to get themselves in that winning position. Now, obviously, you look at Mansfield Town, obviously Lee Gregory, a really good player at this level. He's showing still at his ripe age that he's able to put the ball in the back of the net. Longello scoring for Cambridge United after 50 minutes to equalise, but they were unable to hold on. Now, if you look at the numbers behind the game, it was a very even performance. Cambridge maybe even deserved a draw out of this one, but obviously you look at ball possession, 50-50, expected goals 1.33 to 1.29, shots 15 to 16, and big chances 1 to 2. 2 chances going in Cambridge's favour. Now, if we do look at the 2 lineups for the 2 sides, you obviously look at that side for Mansfield Town, obviously missing Davis Kyler Dunn, who's moved to Barnsley on deadline day just before the international break, and obviously he's a big player that they are going to miss. And obviously they still have some players in there who are really good at this level. You look at obviously Lee Gregory, you look at Des Yoshalaja as well, and they've got some really good players in this team who can be impactful. And you obviously look at the Cambridge setup, and obviously you've got Longello. I think he's been bought in from Birmingham City, correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously Stokes putting in a good performance, and obviously Corey Smith as well, and Brophy, really good performances, but unable to get that finishing touch to take a point. Now, I believe Stokes has picked up 4 assists in 4 games. You can correct me down in the comments, but if we go and look now at the league table, this currently leaves Mansfield Town in 8th, 2 points off those playoff positions, and Cambridge sitting deep at the bottom with 4 losses after 5 games. And that's obviously not what these teams are going to have wanted coming into this one. It's been a fairly difficult start to the season for Cambridge United, and I always thought they were going to get better this year than what they were last year, but they haven't quite hit the ground running, and it's going to be interesting to see how things do change for Gary Monk. And obviously Nigel Clough is doing a fairly decent job with newly promoted Mansfield Town. That is a 2-1 win for Mansfield versus Cambridge. Next up then, we're looking at Northampton Town's 2-1 home defeat to Wycombe Wanderers. They took the lead after just 4 minutes through a penalty through Sam Hoskins, and then Wycombe Wanderers returned the favour by scoring twice on the 11th and 52nd minute to take all 3 points back to Wycombe. Now, if we do look at the game, I think it's a fairly standard result in my opinion. I think it was a fairly deserved win for Wycombe Wanderers. You obviously look here, 47% possession for Northampton to 53. Expected goals wise 1.0 to 2.5. Now bear in mind they scored a penalty which is worth, I believe it's something like 0.78 xg, something like that. And then obviously you've got Wycombe Wanderers with 2.5. 6 total shots for Northampton, 14 for Wycombe. 1 big chance created, 3 big chances for Wycombe. Now, if we do go and look at the two sides, you can obviously see that I think both of these sides are fairly decent League One squads, League One capability. Obviously, look at Morton up front, you look at Hoskins, you look at Pinnock, in my opinion, some really, really good players in this side. You obviously then just look to the other side, and for me, I really like Scowen, I really like McCleary, Adoa, Kone, really, really good players. And you look at the players that they can bring off the bench as well, in Tyrese Backinson, really good player. You look at obviously the players on the other side as well. You've got Tariq Fosu coming on. You've got James Wilson, who doesn't touch the pitch. And Bete Tabu, who came through the Man City Academy. And there's some really, really good players in these two sides. And obviously, if we do look at the league table, obviously we did look at it earlier, Wycombe Wanderers sitting in 10th. Really, really good position, in my opinion. They're not even that far off the playoff positions. You've got Northampton down there in 18th, but they're only 2 points off. So obviously, with it being early days in the division, it's quite interesting to look at how things are going for these sides. Obviously, not necessarily one for your Pep Guardiolas of the world, but certainly a good performance for these two sides. Obviously, you look at non-penalty XG of 0.21, so a penalty is 0.79. It's obviously quite interesting to see that when you look at Northampton not really creating a great deal from open play. Next up then, and it's another 2-1 win, this time going again to the home side. Blackpool score in the 94th minute with Husband to take away all 3 points after Exeter equalised in the 88th minute. It was a really, really interesting game, this one. Obviously, Steve Bruce's first game in charge. Obviously, if we look at the numbers, it doesn't look like a bad performance from either side, really. It looks as if, obviously, Blackpool created the much better opportunities when we look at that XG of 1.77 compared to 0.55. But they only had 4 more shots, 15 in comparison to 11, and 3 big chances in comparison to 1. They were even on possession. And it's one of those for me where we saw a change to Blackpool when Richard Keogh took charge, and I think with Steve Bruce we're going to continue to see that change. Everyone's got a clean slate essentially at Blackpool, and it's really good to see Mateo Joseph playing well. You look at Evans in the midfield putting a really, really good performance. Obviously Micah Hamilton and Husband as well, really, really good game for them. You look at then the team for Exeter City, and it's not necessarily what I would call a contender for the division, but I do think they're capable of staying up. They've got some really good players in there. You look at Wood. I think Whitworth is a fairly good goalkeeper as well. And then obviously you look at the players on the bench, and there's just a different level of quality coming from the Blackpool bench. You look at the likes of Jordan Rhodes, Elliot Embleton, Hayden Coulson, some really good players. You look at Pennington and Carey, who didn't even get on the pitch, in comparison to the likes of Reece Cole, Sonny Cox, Edward Francis. And for me, I think it just shows the difference in budgets and quality of player, really. And I think this is a really good performance by Blackpool to take away all 3 points. Obviously, a late winner after Exeter probably thought they'd done enough to get a point. We are just scrolling through the numbers here, so if you do want to pause and take a look, make sure you do so. But it's one of those for me where I think Blackpool have done really well to take away all 3 points. I think it's a big confidence boost for that team, and especially with Steve Bruce coming in, I think it starts it off really, really well. Then we get on to one of the worst performances of the weekend. Bolton Wanderers absolutely hammered by Huddersfield Town. Now, for 44 minutes, they held in strong, but once that first goal went in, it was as if the floodgates opened. A 44th minute goal, then a 59th minute penalty for Koroma. Wiles popped up in the 68th minute and Evans popped up in the 81st. Now, I'm not sure which one of those goals was the play from the goalkeeper where they're playing out from the back and they give the ball away, but what awful build-up from Bolton Wanderers. I'm not quite sure what's happened to Bolton and Ian Evatt. I'm sure I read something on Twitter. I think it was from Nappers, who does Fleetwood Town content and League One, League Two stuff. I saw something which said that if they were to do 46 games, how they've done 2024, then they'd end up finishing 10th last year. And when you think at points they were like 5, 6, 7, 8 points ahead of Derby last year and ended up not even going up through the playoffs, it's really disappointing. And if we do just look at the numbers, it's all bark and no bite from Bolton Wanderers. 52% possession, 0.13 XG off 5 shots, which is absolutely ridiculous. Not even a shot every 10 minutes. It is really, really poor from Bolton Wanderers. Now, I personally think Ian Evatt should be on the chopping block, but it seems as if they've given the blame to someone in the backroom staff who seems to have moved on. But we'll have to obviously see what happens with that. You look at Huddersfield, 48% possession, 2.92 XG, 16 total shots, 5 big chances. Now, obviously, they do have the penalty, 0.79 XG, as we saw in the previous one. Now, let's obviously look at the two teams. And I think, let's just put it this way. This Bolton Wanderers side isn't awful. It isn't a bad team. Don't get me wrong, they've lost some players across the summer, but realistically they've kept their main threats. You look at Dion Charles, you look at Aaron Collins, Santos, supposedly one of the best defenders in the league. Now, I beg to differ, but a lot of Bolton fans would say that. You look at Thomason in midfield, some really, really good players from last season. And obviously Huddersfield Town have came down from the Championship. They've put in a really good performance with this, with Koroma picking up 2, Marshall getting an assist, Wiles and Evans picking up, Lee's picking up an assist, and they've played really well. They've got some really good players in there. You can't deny it. Sorensen was probably the best right wing back in the league last year at Lincoln City. And you look then at the benches of the two sides, Freddie Ladapo, Joe Hodge, and it's really, really good players. And you look at what they're bringing on at Bolton, Victor Adebaggio, Scott Arfield, Josh Sheehan, John McAtee. You've got Randall Williams sitting on the bench. And it's not as if Ian Evatt hasn't got a contending winning team, in my opinion, because he does. And it's a really, really disappointing performance by Bolton, who obviously, it's another defeat for them. Huddersfield Town sit 4th. Bolton Wanderers sit 21st. I really think Ian Evatt's probably got another maybe 5, 6 games on his belt before he's in real danger, in my opinion, because it's absolutely dreadful. Yes, they dominated passing the ball. Excellent, brilliant. But you need to score goals. You need to create chances, and that's something which they have failed to do. And I do feel bad for the Bolton Wanderers fans, because this is a couple of seasons in a row now where they've bottled promotion from League One. It's going to be really interesting to see how those fans deal with it. Bristol Rovers now, and it's a disappointing performance, but it's not one that I didn't anticipate, really. Now, it's a 50-50 for this game as going into it, because Wigan obviously hadn't had the greatest of starts, but I knew they had a squad in there capable of a performance like this, and Bristol Rovers not quite hitting the heights of what they hit during last season. And obviously you see here 4-0 to Wigan Athletic at home as well, which is going to be very disappointing for those Bristol Rovers fans. Obviously Moore picking up a red card in the 84th minute, but that didn't impact the score. It was already 4-0 at that point. Now, if we look at the basic numbers, similar again to the Bolton Wanderers performance, 52% possession, 0.31 expected goals, 11 total shots. Really, really poor performance. You then look at Wigan Athletic, 48% possession, 3.91 XG, 23 shots and 8 big chances. Now, if we do look at the lineups of the two sides, you've obviously got Carragher playing in at right back, and he's really stepped into the first team and done a fairly good job, in my opinion. You look at Hugel as well, putting a really, really good performance here, picking up 2 goals. You obviously look at this team for Bristol Rovers and you're thinking, what has happened? Now, last season they were quite comfortably a mid-table team. I think they were comfortable by the start of March, at which point they just sort of went on the beach, and it looks as if they have not returned. They brought in the likes of Hutchinson, Junior over here, who they brought in as well, and it's just not quite been good enough. You look at, obviously, the players on the bench, Scott Sinclair, Jamie Lindsay, some really good players, and it's one of those for me where, obviously, we're going to have the likes of Calvin Ramsey, Dale Taylor, Callum McManaman to bring off the bench, but it's not as if, in my opinion, these sides are unevenly matched. I think it's a fairly decent matchup. I'm not saying that the Bristol Rovers side is as good as the Wigan side, because I think Wigan just have a bit of an edge in certain positions. Like, I really like Asgard, I really like Jensen Weir, I like Tickle in goal, really, really good players. And it's one of those for me where I just think Wigan Athletic just knew what they were doing. And it was much better from them, a brilliant performance from them. And again, not mastering the passing side of things, but finding a way to win the game. You look at, obviously, all the XG and things like that, and I just don't know what Bristol Rovers were trying to do in this game, and they really struggled. And it's a clean sheet for Wigan. They move on up the table. If we do just take a look at that, they're currently sitting in 15th place. Obviously not had the greatest of starts, and Bristol Rovers in a similar position really, but one extra game played. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one proceeds throughout the season. On to Crawley Town versus Stockport, and I, looking into this, couldn't see anything more than a Stockport victory, but a draw, I think, goes on as even with the numbers behind the game. Obviously a penalty for Crawley Town. Louis Barry pops up with another goal for Stockport County, and you just can't stop him scoring at this point. He's had a really, really good start to this season. It's going to be interesting to see if Stockport can keep him fit across the year. Let's now take a look into the basic statistics. 63% possession to 37 in Crawley Town's favour. Not unexpected by a Crawley Town team who look to keep the ball. 1.3 XG to 1.44. Very, very evenly matched. Obviously, the penalty does counter into that, so it's more like 0.5 to 1.4. But hey ho, and obviously total shots, 10 total shots to 11, 2 big chances apiece. Now, you look at the lineups, and I have to say, this side that fucking Stockport have put together is unbelievable. Louis Barry, Wootton, Norwood, really, really good players. I think it's a really, really good side, and obviously you then look at the Crawley Town side, and in my personal opinion, it's nothing to shout home about, but they are getting the job done. They are picking up results, and that is what's going to keep them in the division. You look at the benches as well. You've got the likes of Callum Connolly, Jack Diamond, all coming off the bench for Dave Chandler at Stockport. And then obviously he's got Nick Powell there as well. You look at the bench for Crawley Town, and in my opinion it's nowhere near the same amount of quality. Junior Quintama is a really good player, but ultimately not starting, and it's one of those for me where I think Crawley Town and Stockport have had excellent starts to the season. Obviously Stockport sitting in 5th, Crawley Town sitting in 13th. Both teams will be aiming simply for survival, and I think that's the same with Mansfield Town as well. So long as they're staying up, that is the main aim of this division. Now, if you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for all of my latest EFL Championship and League One content heading your way across the course of this season. Obviously, yesterday, Steven Schumacher was sacked by Stoke City. I gave my initial reaction to that in a video at around 12 o'clock yesterday. You've then also got the review show for the Championship, which was out yesterday evening. So make sure you do go ahead and check those out before you finish this video. Really, really interesting results across the Championship, and obviously some really interesting ones across the course of League One too. So shall we get back into it? Next up on the list then is a 1-1 draw between Peterborough United and Lincoln City. Now, I felt this was a really important game for Peterborough to get themselves back on track. Now, they didn't necessarily get that done, but they were able to pick up a point, and that's the important thing at this stage of the season. Getting those points on the board early doors. It's going to be interesting to see how they develop across the course of the season. Obviously, they've got a young talent in their squad, and it's going to be interesting to see how that develops across the course of the season. Obviously, Darren Ferguson will be hoping for a lot more from them, but Lincoln City started this game off well, scoring in the 33rd minute with House, and then Poku equalised in the 65th. Now, if we look at the numbers, it's not even in terms of ball possession, but it's even in terms of what I anticipated. 71% possession to 29%, which is anticipated with Lincoln City. I think they're really good at sitting off and allowing teams to sort of pressure them, but then hitting them on the counter-attack. Now, obviously, scoring that goal early doors meant they didn't really need to go for it. Pretty similar to what Paul Warne used to do at Derby County. Score one, sit in, defend. If you get a chance for a counter, go for it. But you look at XG, 0.53 to 0.98. 9 shots apiece, 2 big chances for Peterborough, 5 for Lincoln City. Now, if we do look at the lineups, I think it's one of those for me where I think Peterborough are still trying to figure out what their best possible setup is, and I still don't quite think they know. I think it's going to take a while for them to know. I think personally they've got bags of time. Derby County after 12 games was sitting in 12th place and were able to finish second in the division, so I do think they have bags of time to get it right, but once they get it right, they've got to hit the ground running and just go, and that's obviously going to be really interesting to see. Obviously you look at the likes of Ricky J. Jones, you look at Poku, you look at Odo, you look at the likes of Randall, Kipriano, Collins, really, really good performers. And obviously the backline did a really good job as well. I've seen a lot of people questioning Sparks, but it's one of them where when you go from Harrison Burrows, who was as impactful as he was, to Sparks, it's always going to be a difficult transition. You look then at this Lincoln City side, and they've replaced Sorensen with Dariqua, who's put in a really, really good performance. And it's one of those for me where both of these sides are just going to grow into the division. There's been a lot of talk about Malik Mothersill as well. Not quite performing to the anticipated level maybe, although I think he is still quite young, so can still develop. Con Clark as well, still looking at that development arc. It's going to be interesting to see how these two teams develop over the course of the season, but obviously it's one of those for me where I expected a bit more from Peterborough. I expected them to create a few more chances. Obviously only 2 big chances in the game, obviously only 9 shots off 71% possession for me isn't quite good enough, but it'll be interesting to see how they develop across the course of the rest of the season. Next up then, we have Leyton Orient. I think this is their first victory of the season versus Reading. Now, Reading had a couple of really decent performances recently, and heading into this one would have been full of confidence in my opinion, but Leyton Orient taking that 1-0 win. And if we do just look at the basic numbers, 55% to 45% possession, expected goals of 1.09 to 0.75, 11 shots to 13, 1 big chance to 0. Now, obviously it's Kelman who's popped up with the goal. You look at that Reading team, really, in my opinion, I think it's a fairly decent side. I do think they still need a little bit more, but I think it's a really, really good side. You look at the likes of on Leyton Orient, you look at Kelman, you look at Clare, Brown, and I think these are both 2 fairly decent teams for this level. Do I think they're going to be pushing playoffs? At this point, maybe not. But I think that both teams can build into that. Obviously, Richie Wellens still in post. There's obviously a lot of talk about him potentially going to Blackpool, but that hasn't happened. And it's been a really, really good job that it hasn't happened, because I think if anyone's going to get a tune out of this Leyton Orient side, it's going to be Richie Wellens. Obviously, right now, I think they'll be sitting in that bottom section, because obviously it's only 1 win out of 5 games, but if they can go on a run now, they only need another win and they're out the bottom 3, and another 2 wins and they're well out of it. So they're in a really good position in my opinion, Leyton Orient, to turn this around after this result. It's all about building on it. Obviously they've got some really good players in there, so it's going to be interesting to see how this one develops across the course of the season. Rotherham United 2, Burton Albion 2. Now, Rotherham will have thought that they had it all sealed up after 57 minutes when Humphreys helped them take the lead, a 2-1 advantage. But it's one of those for me where I'm still not entirely sold on Steve Evans and Rotherham. Now, at the start of the season, I thought they'd built really well, but it's starting to look as if early business isn't necessarily the greatest business. You look at the numbers behind this game, yes, dominant performance, but unable to take all 3 points. And in my opinion, I think we've been able to say that a few times about Rotherham this year. Now, obviously, the basic numbers, 48% possession for Rotherham, 52 for Burton, 2.33 XG, 0.7, 20 total shots to 8, 5 big chances to 0. But it ends 2-2. And you look at the lineups, you look at the players they've got available: Malik Wilkes, Johnson Clark-Harris, Nomb. Really, really good players. You've got Powell as well in there. And for me, I'm not saying that this Burton side isn't good. I think they're still building. Obviously, I think they've brought in 23 players this off-season, which is obviously going to take a long time to gel together. But you look at this obvious Rotherham team. Now, they've brought in a lot of players too, but nowhere near to the same extent. And I just don't... I don't know where Steve Evans is going to go from here. Obviously, they're not in a bad position in the league table. They're 17th. It's not great, but it's not bad. They're still in a position where they're only, they're not even, they're 9 points off the top. Is it 9, 8, something like that? They're not even that far away. Same with Burton Albion, really. They're only 2 points worse off. And obviously, it is only early in the season. There's a long, long way to go this year. At some point, it's going to click for Rotherham, and I think it's going to be scary for the division because they're going to be chasing everybody down. Whether that happens under Steve Evans or not, I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, was bought in the back end of last season for this rebuild job in League One and just hasn't quite hit the ground running. Charlton Athletic then take another victory as they faced Shrewsbury Town at the Crowd Meadow, and I'm not surprised at all by this result, not in the slightest. I think Nathan Jones has taken the Paul Warne mould in League One, and obviously you look at the two sides, it's, in my opinion, it's quite obvious the Charlton side is a better team, and it's not, I don't think it's disrespectful to say that either. You obviously look at the players they've got available to them on the bench and things like that, the likes of Matt Gooden, Alan Campbell. You look at the players in the first team and you look at the likes of Barry, Coventry, Doherty, Ahadmi, Campbell. Really, really good performers. Now, if you do just take a look at the basic numbers, it's 55% possession for Shrewsbury to 45, 1.24 to 1.42 XG, 15 shots for Shrewsbury to 8 shots for Charlton Athletic, 2 big chances to 1. But that just shows the difference between one of the better sides in the division and one of the worst. Shrewsbury unable to take their chances. Charlton take their only major chance in the game, and that just shows by where they both are in the division. Obviously Charlton joint top, obviously a game over at Birmingham City, and then you've obviously got Shrewsbury Town sitting there in 23rd position. It's going to be really interesting to see how these two progress across the course of the season. I really think Charlton Athletic are going to be up there pushing for that playoff position come the end of the season. Well, I thought Barnsley had hit a stride, but it shows that they haven't. I think in the comments of the video where I previewed this, I think I said it's either going to be a score draw or a ball draw, because that's what I anticipate from these two sides. They both seem to have hit a little bit of form at the same time, and Stevenage obviously coming away 3-0 winners. Elliot List picking up 2 goals in the 54th and 89th, with Pierre Gianni picking up another one in the 59th minute. Really good performance from Stevenage, 41% possession, 1.37 XG, 13 shots, 3 big chances, to 59% possession for Barnsley, 0.47 XG, 9 total shots and 1 big chance. Now, if we do take a look at the lineups, it's not like it's a mismatch, let's say, where Stevenage are by far the better side. I think 2 very good teams going head to head here, and similar to when Barnsley faced Derby County at points, Derby County were just able to get the edge. And you look at the players coming off the bench for both teams, I think it's really good players on each side. I'd like to know, Barnsley fans watching this, what is the situation with Conor Horahan? I know he's obviously a player coach, but I feel like I've not actually seen him actually play. If we just go on to Barnsley and just go on to their squad, where is Conor? Conor Horahan. Has he played? Has he picked up an injury? He's played 84 minutes. Now, I don't know if he's injured, so could you let me know in the comment section? Now, back onto the performance. A really good one for not for Barnsley, for Stevenage, my bad. A really good one for Stevenage, picking up all 3 points. It obviously will lift them in the table. They're now sitting just 3 points behind Barnsley, who had a good run. Stevenage sitting there 9th, Barnsley sitting in 7th, had the opportunity to solidify themselves in the playoffs, but were unable to do so. Obviously, still a long way to go before we really need to worry about that. Really interesting game, this one. Stevenage take all 3 points. And we close out with a game between the two American teams, realistically. The ownership models at both of these teams have done really, really well in their performance with the ownership role, really. Obviously, Birmingham have spent a ton of money. People are going to say Wrexham haven't, but they have to get to the position they're in. They've spent tons as well in comparison to the competition. Maybe not this year, but over the course of the last 3-4 years. How long have they been in charge? 3 years, 4 years, something along them lines. They have spent a ton of money now. Now, Wrexham started off really well with Jack Marriott scoring in just the 3rd minute, but to no shock of anybody's in the slightest, Stansfield bagged a brace, Iwala bagged, and it's one of those for me when you've got a £20 million striker in your team. It's quite obvious you're probably not going to lose many games, and it's a really good performance by Birmingham City, in my opinion. Obviously, look at the numbers. It's not as if they created a ton of high quality chances, but 1.5 xg off 8 shots is unbelievable. 3 goals off 3 big chances, again unbelievable. It probably could have been more. And then Wrexham, 32% possession, 0.27 off 5 shots. Obviously, they weren't coming into this game thinking they can go toe to toe. Look at the difference in quality of sides and things like that. And I think you look at the difference in costs of squads, and I think Stansfield probably cost more than Wrexham's entire team. It's one of them for me where Birmingham is still sort of settling down. You look at some of the players they've got, it's unbelievable. Lyndon Dykes, Mark Leonard sitting on the bench, Ben Davis sitting on the bench. It's ridiculous. They've got some unbelievable quality at Birmingham City. It is no surprise to me that they're currently sitting 2nd with a game in hand. Obviously, started off with a draw versus Reading, 4 back-to-back wins. I genuinely could see them breaking the points record this year. And I could see them going unbeaten. It's going to be interesting to see if they are able to do that. Obviously, unbeaten in the league. I think they've lost a couple of cup games already. But it's one of those for me where you can't really say much about Birmingham because they just are going to be the best team in the division. You look at the squad available to them. You look at the players available to them. Christian Bielik left Derby County to join Birmingham when Derby went down to League One after administration because he wanted to play for the Polish national team. He's obviously not in that contention anymore, but when he was at Derby, I'd argue he's an easier championship midfielder, and it is obviously, I don't even think he's playing in midfield for them. I think he's playing at the back. Yeah, he's playing in central defence for them, and for me, it's unbelievable looking at this Birmingham City side. It's going to be really interesting to see sort of how the season goes for them, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they keep it up and go unbeaten for the rest of the campaign. So there we have it then, the League One review show all over and done with. We'll be back tomorrow with the previews for the upcoming fixtures. It's going to be a massive weekend and there's a lot going to happen over the course of the next few weeks. We're obviously getting closer and closer to that 10 game mark where you can sort of settle down and see where people are going to be in the division. I think a lot of it is starting to take shape already. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're trying really hard to hit 1.3 thousand subscribers, and I know that you can help me by hitting that red button, smashing the like button and turning on that notification bell, and I'll catch you in my next video. Find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.